How are you? Hello. Welcome to the month of March, which is Women's Month, which we celebrate. I am Celicia Smith Gordon, president of FSU College of Law Black Alumni Network. Today we have a dynamic woman who many of us know of, but tonight we get to know more about the one and only, the first and only Florida Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice Peggy Quince. She is with us tonight to share stories of herself, what it was like to be on the bench, and now post bench, and all the wonderful and positive things that she has done and is doing for women. We celebrate every step that we take, and we follow tonight the steps that Justice Quince has taken and will continue to do. So thank you, Marlon, for being here and for interviewing our one and only Supreme Court Justice Peggy Quince. We cannot hear you.
We just talked about this. May it please the court for me to turn on my volume.
Please
This
do.
is Marlon Hill. I'm a proud graduate of the Florida State University College of Law, 1995. It's my esteemed pleasure to be here with you. From our living room to yours for the last 2.5 years, Justice, we've been speaking with each other through these 4 screens. But it's my honor to be here today with the first president of the FSU College of Law Black Alumni Network. That's the first history fact. And then we also have the first African American Supreme Court Justice of the state of Florida. And she is here with us, coming to us. I'm not sure if she's coming to us live from the west coast of Florida, where a certain person came out of retirement to play football again. It says retired on her title, but I don't know. She's going to tell us what she is up to. It is our pleasure to welcome Justice Peggy Quince, RET, period. Justice Quince, how are you doing?
I am wonderful. I am busy. I am working in my community, so I'm doing fine. I really have to say that, life is good. God is good to me.
You look so well. Your skin is as beautiful as ever and radiant. So what are you up to? What are you doing with yourselves in the spring, pre-springtime?
Oh my good. I cannot tell you all of the things that I'm doing. I don't think you have enough time. There are days when I believe that I am still fully employed, although I don't get any money for the things that I do. But essentially, I am involved in a couple of nonprofits. I am on the board of the Florida Bar Foundation. I am on the board of another nonprofit. I am on the board of PACE, Center for Girls. I follow the legislative session. I've been following the redistricting and doing talks about redistricting. I do many things in the community.
You know, Celicia.
As well.
You know, Celicia, her title says RET, period. I don't know. So we're starting with Women's History Month in 2022. I know I just asked you about what you're doing now. We're going to come back to that, Celicia. But I think, Celicia, many people may know her and know you, Justice Quince, as Justice. But, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit for the Peggy, or your family may have a different name for you. Your extended family may have a different name for you. But I want to go back to Virginia to learn a little bit more. It's Women's History Month, so we need to know our footprints, right? Because you didn't just become a justice overnight. So what was it like growing up as Peggy in Virginia?
All right. I grew up, as you said, in Virginia, in a rural area of Virginia outside of Norfolk, Virginia, Chesapeake, Virginia. My father was a single parent of 5 children. He worked at the naval base, but we lived, in a rural area, relatively poor rural area of Virginia. So a lot of people who lived around us really thought my father had it made because he had what they considered to be a good government job because he was a stevedore warehouseman for the Navy. But he was raising 5 children essentially alone. But my father, who was not an educated person, had one theme in our household, and that was you had to get an education.
Mm.
He understood, despite his lack of having one, he understood that the only way you could get ahead in America was through education. So that was our job. We had to go to school and make good grades.
Hmm. What was the most important value that you think you took from your dad that you carried all the way with you up until your service on nonprofit boards and following redistricting today?
I think the very fact that he put so much impetus on education carried through. All of my siblings uh, heard the same message. Of the 5 of us, 3 of us, 4 of us actually went to college. One of my sisters decided that was not for her, but she had a good job and took care of her family. But 3 of us actually went to college, graduated from college, were good students. So all of us took to heart that message because he, quite frankly, did not want us to do what a lot of people in our neighborhood did, and that was work in the agriculture industry. They went out each day and picked whatever crop had been grown. They helped to sow those kinds of crops. And sometimes they even took their children out of school during the harvesting and planting season
Hmm.
to help with all of that. But my father said, that is not something that you can do. Your job is to go to school. And that carried through all of our lives, my siblings, and I carried that through to my children.
Mhm.
Uh, so
But
that really is the great lesson.
Celicia, Virginia is still the South, no?
Yes, it
Celicia?
is.
But what about your grandparents? Your dad didn't just wake up and say education is the key. What did you learn about them?
Actually, I did not know any of
Okay.
my grandparents. Um, since my mother and father's marriage broke up when I was young, I did not know her parents. I
I
did
see.
know some of her brothers and sisters. And my father's parents had died before I was born. So I really did not have that kind of extended family. But my father was one of 23 children.
Wow.
No.
Wow. Yeah. My
That's
grandfather had been married twice, and one wife had 12 children, and one had 11 children. And so my father came from a big family. So I knew a lot of his siblings and some of their children.
Celicia, do you need a band TV minute?
Yeah. That hurt. Just to think about that. Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of children.
That's a lot.
But think about it. Some of those children were grown when my father was growing up. And so it wasn't like there were 23 in the household at any one time.
Mm, wow.
Wow.
But still,
Celi-
the woman who bared the children. Wow.
Yeah, 12, 11, that's a lot of childbearing.
Wow. We definitely have to get you to do the Finding My Roots program because there's some untold stories here that we are learning
And
with
I
the
probably
living.
don't even know them myself.
Wow. That's
What
wow.
about middle school, high school? This is the South. What was it like growing up in that time? And you know, what helped you to build your resiliency?
Oh. Of course, I grew up during a time of segregation. I was 6 years old when Brown versus Board of Education was decided. But of course, as you just pointed out, I lived in the South. And what happened after Brown versus Board of Education was, of course, resistance to implementing the Brown decision. So I continued throughout high school to attend segregated schools.
Hmm.
But one of the great things about my segregated schools was that I had teachers who cared about me, who cared about the other students, and they were determined that we would live up to our potential, that they would not fail. So there was, I don't know if it was happenstance or what, but they would call my father if they felt that I was not doing what I should have been doing. If I was in any way rowdy in school, they would call my father. And
Hmm.
my father believed in the adage, spare the rod and spoil the child. And so
Oh.
I did not want my teachers calling my father, but these teachers were great mentors,
That's right.
great motivators. They would tell you, you can do this. I expect you to do this. And so they propelled me from elementary school through high school to do the best that I could do. And quite frankly, I was a good student, especially in math and science.
Okay.
I have a question. You know, what we're talking, that reminds me of what used to be. We used to know our neighbors, and now today, so many of us don't. But that, what you described, as part of the village, the love, the shared desire to ensure that the generation below it, each one did better than the existing generation. As
Mhm.
you look back and you think about um, your colleagues in high school or junior high that you grew up with, or just simply in the neighborhood, I don't know if you stayed in touch with them at all, but did they also find the success in life, whatever that, however that is qualified or quantified? But do you find that they embraced the kind of tutorage and mentorship of the village for their own success?
They absolutely did. I am in touch with a number of people from my high school, and uh, in I, at our 50th reunion, I went back for my 50th reunion, my 25th reunion, my 10th all of those. And so we've kept in touch over the years, and many of them were successful, have been successful in their own right.
Mhm.
We all embraced pretty much the principles that these teachers were laying out for us. In fact, the year I graduated from high school, our class sent more people to college than any other high school in the area.
Wow.
Our teachers really cared about us. And that was the beauty of the situation we were in. We did not have the same kind of facilities that other schools may have had.
What's the name of
Um,
that school, Justice?
excuse me.
What's, what's the name of
The
that
name of
school?
the high school I went to was Crestwood High School in Chesapeake, Virginia. It is now a junior high school. Once they started integrating all the schools, most of the Black high schools became junior high schools.
Or technical schools.
Yes. And
Mhm.
so it is no longer a high school, but I believe I was told, I have not visited the junior high school, that the trophies and all of those kinds of things that were a part of the high school are still there in that building. And the building, I assume, has been renovated over the years because it had been there a long time, even when I was there.
Well, your footprints, Justice, are still there. We know that. And we all had a guidance counselor before we went to college. When did you start thinking about fulfilling your dad's dream and where you would go? How did that occur?
It started long before college and even before high school. It really started in elementary school
Wow.
because the teachers would talk to us about this is the beginning. You've got to do well at this point to get to the next point and to ultimately go to college. So the teachers talk to us about college even in elementary school. And of course, then elementary school for me was the first through the seventh grade. And then you started high school at the eighth grade. So the teachers, the guidance counselor, the librarian, all of those people, as Attorney Smith Gordon just said, it was a village. These people came together and embraced the students. I cannot tell you how many times a teacher would pay for me to go on a field trip that the school might be taking. For example, we lived in Virginia. What's in Virginia? Jamestown, Yorktown, Williamsburg, Laurie Caverns over in the western part of the state. And there would be field trips to those places. Often my father could not afford to pay for me. He was, as I said, a single parent of 5 children.
Justice,
A teacher would pay for it for me.
were these schools segregated, primarily black, mixed? What was the composition?
The composition was black.
Okay.
It
Did
was
that make
the
do you
high
believe
school,
that made a difference?
the elementary school, and the high school that I attended were totally black. I was a senior in high school when I was finally told that if I wanted to, I could go to the white high school that was closer to where I lived than the high school I went to. This was when Virginia started its freedom of choice plan. Well, I was a senior in high school. My choice was to finish the high school I had started in. I was not going to change high schools in my final year. So, yes, it was a totally black, the faculty and all the students, all the people who worked there in the cafeterias as custodians, everyone in the school, black.
Do you think that influenced your decision for Howard?
It probably was a partial reason for it. I was, in my own words, I was an immature 18-year-old.
Why would you say
And
that?
I really, because I had lived, I think, a pretty sheltered life. We didn't travel. I mean, my family could not afford to travel. And so I didn't feel that, and not having been around white people other than because I lived in a rural area, there were neighbors who might have been, but there was no real interaction with my white neighbors. I did not feel that I was ready to embrace a culture where I was going to be one among a lot of white students. So that influenced my choice of going to Howard because I received scholarships to a number of schools, including places like the University of Pennsylvania, Grinnell, any number of schools. But I did not feel that I was ready, that I was mature enough to deal with the racism that I was going to face.
You know, Celicia, I have a picture in my mind of a Peggy Quince entering Howard University in the late 60s. And I'm trying to picture the fashion and the hairstyle.
Well, you know what? So let's explore that. So, Justice Quince, when did you pledge, AKA? And I still use the word pledge because that's what we did when 30.
That's right. That's what we
years ago when I did it. So,
what I pledged in 1969. I was a junior at that time, and that's the year I pledged.
All right. So there are pictures somewhere, Marlon. We're going to find them.
So I want Justice. How would you describe Peggy on a Bison campus? What
Ooh.
the pledgee?
I was just thrilled to be, well, first of all, I was thrilled to be away from home. I mean, because I never have really been away from home more than a week or so at any one time before. And so I was grown. I'm away from home. My father is not there to tell me what time to go to bed. And by the way, when I was growing up, bedtime was 8:30 p.m. From Sunday through Thursday. Only on Friday nights and Saturday nights could you stay up until 11.
Well, you had a lot of brothers and sisters to get to bed as well.
And the only reason you could stay up beyond 8:30 is if you had additional homework to do. So, and there was no television during the time you did your homework.
So there was a lot going on in our country in the late 1960s, Justice Quince. What were you busy doing on campus during that time in our history?
Well, I joined a couple of organizations pre-Alpha Kappa Alpha. In my freshman year, I joined a group called Angel Flight. And it was associated with the Air Force ROTC. And actually, you went through that pledge period kind of thing, even to join that organization. But some friends of mine and I decided we were going to do that since we couldn't join the sorority at that point. You had to be at least in your sophomore year to join a fraternity or sorority. And so to get to know other people, we decided we were going to join Angel Flight. And it was truly a great organization. And Angel Flight was associated with the Honor Air Society, which were the guys. And so we dressed up in a blue and white uniforms because it was a part of the Air Force ROTC on campus. And we learned to march, and it was wonderful. I even took courses in the detachment. I learned about Article 15s and court martials and all of that. It was a wonderful organization, and through which I met a lot of wonderful women and men.
What was on your playlist back then, Justice Quince? Describe for us your vibe. What is your vibe?
So what do you listen to?
My what?
Your playlist. What kind of music did you listen to?
What was on your playlist back in college?
Well, Marvin Gaye has always been my absolute favorite. To this day, I love Marvin Gaye. And let's think about that. His What's Going On album is as relevant today as it was the day he made it, isn't
Amen. It? Yes, it is.
So I loved Marvin Gaye. I loved Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack actually performed a lot in Washington, D.C. During the time I was there. And they would come up on campus and perform. Any music from the 60s is the music I like. My children will tell you, and my children know that music as well as I do, because that's practically all we played in my house while they were growing up. Of course, I listened to that other music just so I knew what they were listening to. But my preference was music from the 60s and the early 70s.
So the Temptations.
The Four Tops.
Martha Reeves and the Vandellas.
The Dells. All of those groups were just wonderful.
See, Marlon's too young to know about that.
That's a real shame. That's when music was really music.
That's right. That's true. That's true.
So tell us, when did law school start to creep into your mind as a potential turn in the chapter of Peggy Quince?
Well, I was a zoology major in undergraduate school, and that is what my degree is in. Because first of all, I started thinking about law
I didn't know that.
before I graduated, but I could not afford to change my major. I had a scholarship for 4 years, so I had to finish college in 4 years because my father would not have been able to afford to pay for a year in college. I could have potentially worked, because I did work some when I was in college, because I had a scholarship. It paid for tuition, it paid for room, it paid for board. But some of those little other things, that I wanted, I worked for. So anyway, to make a long story short, I became interested in law during the time when we were doing sit-ins. I sat in with them at the administration buildings. The war in Vietnam was going on in our country during that time. In my final year, there was the murder of the students at Kent State University. All of these things were, in my mind, legally related. And that's really those events, the civil rights movement, those events sparked my interest in the law. So after undergraduate school,
What was the plan with zoology, though?
the plan with zoology was medical school.
Okay.
And in fact, after I finished school, I took both the medical entrance examination and the law school entrance examination because I was still a little wishy-washy about what I wanted to do. And I must tell you, I made a better score on the medical entrance examination.
Okay,
I really wanted to get involved in the law. So I went to law school anyway, despite the fact that I really had done better on the medical school entrance exam.
Wow. So that's a history gem right there. We could have had Dr. Peggy.
Do you have pets?
Do I have pets?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Wow. I'm surprised.
Well, first of all, we had a dog when my children were growing up. But when they went away, I really didn't feel like I had the time to devote to a dog. And even now, I don't have that kind of time because, once we're past COVID, I'm going to get back on the road and travel some more.
Yes.
So I don't think it's fair to a dog to constantly put them in and out of a kennel.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have pets.
We could have had Dr. Peggy Quince.
Yes. Yes.
So I assume you applied to a number of law schools before you made a choice?
I
you?
really only applied to a few law schools because first of all, even though the fee to apply was small then compared to what it is now, I didn't have a lot of money and some of the schools waived it, but some didn't. And I really enjoyed living in Washington, D.C. And so when I got my acceptance I was accepted at both Howard and Catholic University, but I decided to go to Catholic University because I felt it was time for the integrated experience.
Why?
Because as you and I both know, the law then and even now was essentially a white profession. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn how to deal in that world. Mm. I had attended, as I told you, all Black elementary school,
right?
All Black high school,
right?
And essentially an all Black college. While right. We had some white students there at Howard and many actually white professors at Howard, it was still essentially a Black environment.
Right.
So I had
Wow.
to step out of my comfort zone. I needed to step out of my comfort zone and learn to deal in the what I consider to be another world.
Mhm.
You know, Celicia, I have a painting on my desk here from an artist friend of mine, and it says, if it was nearby to me, I would pull it. Said, "Your comfort zone will kill you."
Yes,
Really?
Yes, I'm gonna actually step in and show you.
that's
See if you can
very,
see it.
very true.
If you can see it, there it
I
is.
can. Very nice. That's a
Your
good
comfort zone
thing to
will
have
kill
on
you.
your desk to
That's
remind
right.
you to
So
step
when you
out.
step on to Catholic University with this decision to step out of your comfort zone, did you feel like
Did I feel like I had
you were
stepped?
out of your comfort zone?
Of course I did. In the incoming class, I think there were maybe 125 students. And of that 125, 15 maybe were Black. And of course, in the other classes, the second year students, the third year students, there were even fewer.
Mhm.
So I had come out of my comfort zone. I had never been in that kind of situation where I was truly the minority.
What did
Uh,
that feel like?
for a while, it was like, am I going to how do I get to know these people? I'm sure they don't even want to get to know me, although that's not necessarily true. And that was my own bias and prejudice kicking in, because there were really some very nice people in my class who did not look like me. But there were people in my class who did look like me, and we banded together.
Mhm.
We would study together. We would have parties together. And every now and then I would venture out to another kind of party, the
With the
kind that
temptation
I'd never
of
gone
Marvin
to.
Gaye. Right.
Yeah,
The story of our life going in and out.
Yes.
going in
Yeah.
and out.
Yeah.
And but after a while, you find your own comfort. You
What
find your
what
own
what was
group of
that for you?
friends, and that was both white and Black.
What was that for you? You said you found your own comfort. So
I
was that the
found
comfort
that
zone or just your comfort?
just comfort,
Comfort.
Okay.
part of which was I found that I could compete with them also.
Mhm.
Especially after the first group of grades came out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can do this.
Mhm.
I'd never actually competed with white students before, right?
Mm.
You know what
Wow.
my background had been before that.
Mhm.
And so I think that gives you a level of comfort and confidence.
You can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, you can breathe a little bit because to some extent, and we it's implanted in our minds through many methods that we are not quite up to snuff,
Mhm.
you know?
Yes.
But it
Which is
sounds
not
like it sounds like Peggy lesson number 3. You're really just competing against yourself because you were competing against yourself all this time, and you thought that you needed to compete against something else when you really didn't.
No, I really didn't. But that's the way life is sometimes. So I found I was a lot more comfortable after my first semester there because it was like going to any other school, really.
Okay.
I
Did
mean,
you
it's
sneak?
not quite like it. There's nothing like the law school experience and that Socratic method and all that, uh, but I felt comfortable that yes, this is for me. Yes, I can do this. Uh,
Mm.
so that's the kind of comfort that I'm talking about.
I want to know, how did you never, I'm sorry,
No, go
quick
ahead.
question. In your law school class, were there other Black women?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And
Um, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if there were 15 say there were 15 Black students, at least half of them were women.
Do you know if they became lawyers or judges or justices?
Um, Actually, one of them was on. She wasn't on the highest court in New York, but the next down court in New York. And we were great friends. She lives in New York, and she grew up in New York and came. And then she went back to New York to practice. I know of at least two other males who had been in my class who became judges. My husband, my late husband, was in my class, and so did he. He was a judge for a while, and then was an administrative law judge. There were lots of people in my class. The Blacks in my class really did well.
Mm. Were you involved in the Black Law Students Association and
Oh.
non-ball associations as well? Did you go in and out?
I was involved with the student division of the ABA, I guess it is, and with BALSA. I was an officer in both of those organizations, and I always believed that you had to get involved.
Yeah.
How did you navigate as a Black woman then and even now? And I ask this question sincerely because last week I had some students ask me, so I'm going to pose this question to you. How did you navigate then being in positions or in environments where you really were not welcomed, but yet you still needed to succeed? How did you navigate that?
Well, I guess you navigate it by doing what you need to do. You cannot let others define how you are going to act or even react. And so even though I may have known, and there were professors who let it be known that they thought there were people in the class who should not have been there. And I knew exactly who they were talking about. You can't let that define who you are or what you're going to do. And really, it kind of puts my back up to show them you are wrong. And I'm going to show you that this is exactly where I belong.
Wow. And you did. she showed them, didn't she, Marlon?
Yeah.
So you can't always have a visible reaction to how people treat you, but you can have an internal reaction, which to me just makes you stronger and willing to go the extra mile to say, this is who I am, not who you define me to be.
As you know, I know that you're familiar with the ABA, the American Bar Association study recently. It indicates that about 70% of our women of color are leaving the profession of law. Well, for me, that garners up some angst there. I'm not one of them, but it does, because it's troubling. How do you see it for Black women and the impact on our justice system if indeed the trend continues of us leaving the practice of law?
Yeah, I think it's a real shame, but we face every day. Almost, it seems there's another battle to fight. You just look at all the statistics. What really drives me crazy is the pay inequity.
Yes.
They want you to do the work, but they don't want to pay you what the guy down the hall doing the same work is doing. They don't want to pay you what they pay you.
I'm going to put myself on mute so we can have this conversation.
They, and that bothers me, and I think that leads a lot of women to want to give up the profession. Plus, a lot of jobs and firms are not family friendly,
Right.
and like it or not, women are still the primary caregivers
Yes.
in their families.
Not only to their existing families, but to their extended families.
Exactly. And so the angst that you go through on the job, and then having to deal with all the other things in your
Yeah.
life, I think that's what's driving women, Black women, away from the profession.
But
We
then
need,
we need
we
something.
law firms, I think, need to embrace the fact that everyone is not going to have that. I am driven to be the next partner. I'm going to spend 70, 80 hours a week to get there. But appreciate the fact that there are others who want a life, and just working billable hour after billable hour is not a true life.
Wow.
And law firms, I think, need to come to grips with that.
When you came to Florida and started your own firm, and even before you joined the AG's office, how did you balance it?
Well, I must say, I had a terrific husband, and my husband and I raised our children together. He did as much for them as I did. We had
Mm.
two girls, and when we did their hair, he did one and I did the other. He cooked, and I cleaned and helped with homework. So we had a real partnership
Hmm.
in raising our families. And so that is one of the things that had helped me in my career, because I had someone else who was there. If he needed to work late, I could go home and be with the children. If I needed to work late, he could go home. And he did not resent or squawk about being a caregiver when I needed to be someplace else.
I think one of the advantages there, though, is that he understood what it was like or what was necessary for the profession.
That's because he was in the profession
He was
also.
in the
Right.
profession. That's right. That's
That's a
right.
real. That's a real blessing. Tell us a little bit about having your own law firm. We know a few people who own their own
You know
law
what?
firm.
It was such a short period of time. I am not a good salesperson. I do not know how
Yes,
to
you are.
drum up business. And so it was never a thriving it was never a
Mm.
thriving practice. But luckily, I had a husband who was bringing in income, and so it wasn't really a critical thing.
Hmm.
So I just decided this was not for me. And that's when I decided to apply for a position with the Attorney General's office.
Your daddy told you a good government job.
A good government job. Just like my dad. I must tell you, it was the Attorney General's office was one of the best positions I can think of. It was almost like a family environment. Those of us who worked there became close. We mentored each other. We actually did social things together. We I It was really, I cannot tell you just how enjoyable it was working at the Attorney General's
What,
office. It was
what did you
it was
love?
a
What did you love?
bittersweet day when I left there.
What did you love the most about it?
I loved the whole feeling of being a family there.
Mm.
That we were not competing with each other
Mhm.
necessarily, because often I think, and not having ever worked in a big law firm, I've always got the sense, however, that there's a certain amount of competition that's going on between the associates to see who can, rise to the top and get the big boss's attention and all those kinds of things. But at the AG's office, we didn't have that kind of competition going on. And so we did our work without any thought of, I'm going to best this one.
Just as they say that we as lawyers, we're always learning, no matter how much older we get or when we started. What did you learn at the AG's office that you think was just resonates with you, that really turned the corner for you as a part your journey for learning? What did you learn during that experience?
What did I learn at the AG's office?
That took your practice or took your journey with the law
to the Supreme Court.
To the Supreme Court.
I think what I learned best was how to research and write and present that information in a cohesive, succinct manner so that the party reading it, that is the judges who read all the briefs that I did, knew exactly what I was saying, that there was no having to read between the lines. That's what I learned at the Attorney General's office. And that's what I looked for when I was a judge looking at briefs. Give me the facts and the law in a succinct manner so that I know what is going on. And, all that fluff is fine. People like to bill their clients for a 50-page brief, and it could have been 30 pages. I like the 30-page brief if it is accurate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that at the Attorney General's office.
As we celebrate, of course, Women's Month, and you were the only Black female ever on the Florida Supreme Court. I'm wondering, how do you now, in your supposedly retirement, so you retired from the bench, but I know you, so I know you are like, I don't know, you might be busier now than you were when you were on the bench.
That is a fact.
That's a fact. So as we look at Katia Brown Jackson,
Ketanji,
how do I pronounce her first name? Ketanji Brown Jackson being nominated to be the first Black woman of the United States Supreme Court. What advice would you have for her if you could give her some?
In 30 pages.
Instead of 50? I would just tell her to hold her head up and don't let anybody tell her that she doesn't deserve this. She has done exactly what all of the rest of them have done. She, as a double Harvard grad, right? She's on that circuit court that 3 people on the Supreme Court right now served on. But you know what? She brings to that court something that has been sorely needed and that court has not had since Thurgood Marshall. And that is some criminal defense background. She was a public defender for 2 years. All of our courts handle criminal cases, including the United States Supreme Court. We have sorely missed having that defense defense perspective on the court, and she brings that to the court. But to get back to your question,
30
she
pages.
has all of the qualifications that everyone else on that court has. And so she just needs to hold her head up and don't let anybody tell her that she doesn't deserve this.
Justice, even after having all those credentials, family support, it just seems like Black women are continue to fight battles. What battles are left for you to fight?
There's so many. You don't have time for me to go through them all. But voting,
Pick one.
just voting. That is a real battle right now. Right here in the state of Florida, what they did last year, the legislation that was passed, making it more difficult for mail-in ballots and who can bring it. Then this year they turn around and do some more voter suppression.
That's right.
Voting is so very germane to everything that we do. Yes. That is a great battlefield right now. And I'm telling you, we all have got to get out there and fight it. The whole notion of democracy is at risk right now.
Yes.
Well, I can see that warrior face and body language come straight onto the screen. She's ready to fight, Celicia.
I'm with her all the way. So
we're coming
because we have that particular issue, and we have others, but we're talking about the vote because the vote carries so much power. I always say if there's something that someone does not want you to have and has every roadblock imaginable to stop you from doing it, that is something of value.
It is.
And the vote is of value. But if we are knowing that, and we are Black women who are in the law, we are sisters in the law, we must retain us. We must find a way for our voices to be heard and to keep galvanizing and promoting others within the profession who are Black women.
At every election, you have poll watchers. I did that in the last election cycle, both in the primary and the general election. And a part of those watchers are people who it's a legal team.
Yes,
that's
been part of it.
If there's an issue that comes up, they deal with those issues. We can help in that way.
Absolutely.
There is so much that can be done. We just have to have the will to do it. And if we don't have the will to do it, we're going to find ourselves, I think, maybe I shouldn't say this on this platform, but in an authoritarian...
You're retired, Judge. You're retired.
We're going to find ourselves in an authoritarian state.
Yes.
It's something none of us want to have happen. So we have to pull out every bit of energy and thoughtfulness that we can in order to get people galvanized and we don't need to have a Black person on the ballot to come out to vote. Right. We know we had record numbers when Barack Obama was on the ballot both times. Mm-hmm. We had really good numbers because Kamala Harris was on the ballot. Well, they're not going to be on the ballot in 2022. But it's still important who becomes the governor. And it has a direct impact on us in the law because what does the governor do? The governor appoints all these judges.
Yes.
It is important that people understand that the ramifications of getting out to vote.
How do we, you wrote an article that I read maybe about 2 months ago. And in that article, you were talking about the state of the judiciary and politics, mired with politics. Do you have any concerns? And if so, share what we can do about that, since we're talking about voting. And, in Florida, we have for the appellate judges, the merit retention um, on the ballot, but many people either skip over that section for judges. Well, probably skip over it because I have been one to count the ballots and oversee the ballots, and a lot of times that's just left. What do we do? How do we resolve this issue?
Well, first of all, we have to educate people that, how these judges get there. And it starts with for appellate court judges and Supreme Court justices, it starts with who is in the governor's office. Okay. We have to explain that to people, that is who makes the decision about who goes onto those courts. We have to explain to people that, just because, and then judges that you vote on, just because someone is a judge or has been a judge for 10 years doesn't necessarily mean you have to vote for them again.
Right.
Although for the most part, I take the position that if a judge has not done anything truly egregious, then I will vote for them. But I think we have to really educate people about the kinds of decisions that judges make too. Not individual judges, but judges as a group. I mean, someone may or may not challenge the recent legislation about banning abortions after 15 weeks. Is it 15 weeks?
It's 15 weeks.
Okay. Someone may bring a challenge, a constitutional challenge to that. It may be important who's on the bench.
Who's on the bench?
Going to hear that.
That's right.
So, but people don't make those connections, I think, when it comes to judges.
The governor does when he does the appointments.
Exactly. So we have to do a better job of educating people. Even, for example, like last elections cycle, we had 6 constitutional amendments on the ballot, correct?
Yes.
I took it upon myself to analyze those 6 constitutional amendments, look at what were the ramifications of either a yes or no vote for those constitutional amendments. And I did presentations around the state about that, because people go in there,
No, that's right.
For the most part, what's on the ballot doesn't really help you to truly understand all of the things that is encompassed in that proposed constitutional amendment. And so I felt it was important that our communities try to have some knowledge of what they were voting on.
For sure.
So, to me, those are the kinds of things that we as lawyers,
yes,
because we certainly can read those things and analyze and understand what would happen under what kind of situations, right?
Yes.
I think it's important for us to educate people on those issues. Absolutely. And not have them go into the booth and either not vote on them at all,
or do any
vote on them without any real understanding of what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Celicia, you have wound up our justice. She is ready to let her loose. But we're winding down Band TV. It's been such a delightful conversation.
Well, we have to ask her one thing before you close out. So
I was about to ask one more last.
I call her Ma Peggy, and so she is an avid reader. So tell me, what are you reading now?
Let's see. I just finished. I can't even remember the Cicely Tyson autobiography. And I'm getting ready to read, what is the name of it? Why We Marched. It's about the the suffrage movement.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because the lady who wrote it, I have chapters that involve Black people too, and we know how the white
The
people,
suffrage, right?
women didn't want at some point the Black people to be out front
Right.
and
So they
didn't
had
want
to be in the back
the
with
back of
Ida,
them
Ida
going to
Wells,
the
Ida
back,
Pieces.
all of that kind. And so I'm about to read that, and then I'm gonna read another one that's I just bought that's called White Tears, Brown Fears, maybe. And it so I'm reading a few things.
All right, I'm going to send you two. The one we talked about Bell and J.P. Morgan, and the one I'm currently reading is by Octavia Butler called Fledgling.
Now Octavia Butler is a sci-fi writer, isn't she?
Yes, she is. She is. So this is the third book I'm reading. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Last two questions for you, Justice Quince. What are you doing for self-care when you're not reading?
I walk almost every morning. My sister and I get up and we walk. We usually are out the door by 7:00. We try to walk 5 miles, and so we do that. We try to eat healthy, although I love food. But we try, there's this thing you're supposed to have at least half of your plate green vegetables.
Right.
So we try to do that.
But what's your weakness?
I really love peanuts and popcorn. I'm not a big chocolate person because I try to stay away from caffeine, and I don't really like sodas, but I do like potato chips and those kind of snacky things. So I have to keep that to a minimum.
So if the band network, Justice Quince, were to pay it forward with an organization that you believe in their mission right now, who would you want to put into the universe for us, that a mission that deserves more support and resources?
A mission? What now? I'm sorry.
An organization that you believe in their mission. And if we were to pay it forward to that organization, what organization or mission is really in the middle of a battle now that needs your support?
Well, I am also involved with community organizations that do things for children. And I'm actually the president of a foundation, and we have a wonderful STEM program, teaching children about math and science and engineering and technology. And I went to one of the programs a few weeks ago, and we had children, they were teaching children about robotics. And it was just wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see how engaged the young people were. And so that's an issue, a program that I'm really, really fond of.
Awesome. Well, it's Women's History Month. I'm going to ask my president, Celicia Gordon-Smith, to take us out and close us out. The month is not over yet, but I'm going to ask her to give us a closing.
Not by a long shot. We've got lots more to do.
We've got lots more time, but I'm going to ask. So I'm going to say thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking with us and sharing your time with us. And as we have so many, the Black Alumni Network has so many more things in on our agenda to complete, we will take a lot of the information that you share with us today, and we will remember it and try to put it into use and into play. And we will share this video so that others will see it as well. I'm going to ask Justice Peggy Quince to leave us with one thing. The one thing I want you to leave with us is a superpower. So if you could share with us and gift to us something that you think that we need to have, that's a superpower of yours, what would it be?
I'm a superpower.
A superpower.
Hmm.
A
One
gift.
that,
Well, I think what I would leave with you and everyone else is that you must think for yourself.
Bam.
In this day and age, people listen to too much
Stuff.
news, supposedly news, and but it really is someone giving their analysis of the news. And they are not, and so people aren't thinking for themselves. They take what's given to them, and that becomes their holy grail. I,
talk about it.
People need to think for themselves. That's what I would leave.
All right. Thank you so much.
Period, full
Bam.
stop, no semicolon.
Drop the mic. There you go. There you go. Drop the mic. Well, again, thank you. And thank all of the people who are viewing this video tonight. We appreciate your time, and we will see you soon. Please make sure that you follow us on social media. Visit our website, which is a part of the FSU College of Law Black Alumni Network. Again, we thank the one and only dynamic Florida Supreme Court Justice Peggy Quince, who is supposed to be retired. She's retired from the bench, but she's dynamic everywhere else now. So thank you to Marlon Hill, who is our corresponding chair and the moderator and host of Band TV. Good night, everyone.
Good night, and thank you.